David Edward and Lynn Catalano discuss Lynn's book, Wrecking Ball Relationships.
Lynn, how are you?
I'm great. I'm so excited to be here with you today.
Yeah, we're both in the eastern section of the United States, that left to right, but top to bottom, we couldn't be any farther apart. I'm in Ocala, Florida, and I think you said you're in Canada, right?
No, I'm close. I'm very close to the Canadian border, Niagara Falls, New York.
I'm just throwing you loops early. I know. I mean, we just talked about it, so it'd be pretty remiss to forget. But yeah, you're closer to Toronto than New York City, but you're still in New York. That's right. So Lynn, I've talked to lots of people that have written books, and everyone you have that first line. How do you open a book? And there's been some pretty good openings in the history of books, right? I mean, it was a dark and stormy night. It was a cold day in April when the clock struck 13. But then I think you have come up with something that might even top those, which is, am I being punked? That's a great way to open a book about narcissism. So let's get into it.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate it because, it was really stream of consciousness at that point. It was all about real feelings in real time and what was happening to me. I had a ton of questions. I was confused. I was lost. And, I'm an attorney by education. And so it naturally guided me into research, what was happening. And so while I was researching, I was writing. It was cathartic and I would write down what was happening. But I thought to myself, can anyone see this? Like, does anyone else hear what I'm hearing? Because it's crazy. It's not normal, but you don't know it when you're in it.
Right.
And so hence that's where that comes from.
Well, let's back up a little. So go over what your book is about, and then we'll jump into our conversation. But yeah, I think I'm not familiar with it to the level that you are. But everyone's familiar with it, and we'll talk about it more. But I think you're right, which is it's almost like you can't believe it at first. It's like you're not understanding something right because we all internalize so much. But we'll get to that. Let's jump in. So go ahead and set up the name of the book. We haven't even said the name of the book yet, and what it's about and how it came about.
So the name of the book is Wrecking Ball Relationships: How to Identify, Live with, or Leave the Narcissist in Your Life.
Right.
So, for me, I really did not have an intention to write a book. And I certainly didn't have an intention to have this personal experience. I don't think anyone sets out to have this type of experience. But my mother died very suddenly 12 years ago, and I'm an only child. Okay. And when she died, I tried so many different things with my father. I tried to wrap him into my young family. I had 2 small daughters and my husband. And the things he did and said were so odd, and they weren't in the character that I had known him through my mother. And so, it left me with just, I would walk away and say, what just happened? What was that? And the more research I did, the more I discovered, the more I learned. And then I realized I had all this writing, all this research. What was I going to do with it? And it was pointed out to me that perhaps I might want to expand my book beyond just my story and interview other people who had had experiences with their narcissist. And so those were all different from what I had. Here I had a parent. They had bosses, siblings, romantic relationships, friends. I mean, it was really, really interesting. And so what I did was I used their stories, with their permission, of course, to illustrate the concepts. And I also used a lot of pop culture references because I love pop culture, and I find that it's our commonality.
Okay.
No matter where we're from, right? Who we are, how we grew up, what kind of house we lived in, we can all find commonality in music, movies, TV shows.
Right. So how did you go from just dealing with the situation and let's get a couple things out there. I mean, you mentioned it, but I mean, you have a law degree, you passed the New York bar. It's not like you're coming at this, without knowledge about how to do research and how to frame things. And of course, you're dealing with it in your personal life. How does that, though, get you to putting it into a book, and then what did that process look like of making that decision and getting yourself organized, and I guess lining up the interviews, and I mean just the whole endeavor. Walk us through that a little bit.
I think that it was frustration with my position at the time with my current job, which I have moved on from. And I think I felt like the universe was trying to tell me something, because at the time I was in a really toxic workplace and I didn't realize it. And here I was doing this research and I started to put two and two together. How do narcissists manifest in the workplace? Well, they're toxic. They create this toxic workplace, and they have similar characteristics of a narcissist in a personal relationship. And so I started comparing those. And then I realized maybe I meant to write the guidebook that I was looking for.
Okay.
Lost. Like, this is not, I'm not writing a scientific book. This is not written, although I have a BA in psychology, I am not a psychologist. I am not a psychiatrist. I did not write this as a textbook. I wrote this as something that people can read and identify with and understand then how, like, learn the red flags, how to spot these people. When I was growing up, there used to be a local department store and their tagline was, "An educated consumer is our best customer." And I think that applies in these types of relationships. The more you know, the better prepared you are when you encounter one of these types of people.
Right. Well, so how long did it take you to write the book?
Well, I could easily tell you that it took me around a year to write the book, but I will tell you that I was writing my stories in real time over the 11-year period of time as they happened.
Yeah.
So, for me, that was my own catharsis. So I used that. I imagine had I not written all of that, it could have still taken me around the same time, but I think that once you get going and once you get an outline, a table of content,
that's what I was going to ask you. Yeah.
Yes, I think that is so powerful, because then you have a real direction for your book and you can see it. It's like your own map as to where you should go. And then the other thing is, I think that it's very doable when you break it into chapters.
Okay.
The idea of writing a whole book and writing, almost 300 pages, how could you possibly?
Right. Yeah.
But when you say, okay, let's sit down and let's just write about this one concept. Let's use, your stories and the stories from the people you interviewed. Let's find some movies or TV shows that relate to that concept. Let's talk about them. Let's use your research on the science behind it and just write whatever you can. Mm-hmm. Then all of a sudden you've written 20 pages.
Yeah. Now, is that how you would organize it? You would come in and you would, did you write in the morning, the afternoon? And then you'd say, okay, I'm in this chapter and I'm writing this chapter and I can leave the room when I'm done, or I've written 500 words, or just how did you manage a day on a day-to-day basis?
So I was doing other things while I was writing the book. I was never just writing the book. So when I say that, for the first 6 months, I was in a different position. And then from the last 6 months, I was building my own coaching and speaking business.
Okay.
So I was never just writing, but what I would do is I would work on this one chapter and it would probably take me a good 2 weeks with that one chapter. And I allowed myself so that it wasn't always morning or afternoon. I was just thinking about that chapter I was focused on that particular chapter and that concept. And then you tend to see and hear things that might apply to it, while you're moving around, right?
Yeah.
You watch a TV show and you go, oh my gosh, this is exactly what I'm talking about, or whatever it is. And that allowed me to really sculpt and edit the chapter so that while I might stream of consciousness write 20 pages, then I would cut it down to 12 or 14, to be.
Now, did you write the book front to back, or would you pick a chapter that was related to what was going on in your life? Sorry, I stumbled on the word, but how did you organize writing? And I also want to go back. How did you organize the outline? How did you think your way through that? And then did that change at all as you were writing the book?
Yes. Well, so the first question, no, I did not write it, as the chapters flow. Not at all.
Okay.
And I would give this advice to anyone thinking about writing a book: pick the easiest chapters to write first.
Okay.
There's no one's ever going to hold that against you, you know.
Well, yeah, right.
So, you know, they tell you to write what you know,
Mhm.
but certainly if certain chapters are more cut and dry and just easier and less emotional, and for whatever reason, it's
Yeah.
just easy, write those first.
Right.
And
Right.
you get those out of the way. And then I wrote actually the first chapter and the last chapter last.
Okay.
I don't know if that's what anyone else does, but for me, I wanted to make sure that that first chapter is kind of an introduction and it sets the tone for the whole book.
Right. Right.
And I will tell you that I did rearrange the table of contents at the end,
Okay.
which is interesting because I certainly didn't intend to do that, but it just happened
Yeah.
that I felt like certain things flowed better.
I think that's important. I think you have to be brave. It's almost like you feel like you have to be brave to do that by the time you get to the end,
Yes.
right? Because you're like, nah, I've been cooking this cake for a year.
Yes.
This is the cake, and you're like, well, wait, it might be better if I do this and do that. So,
Yes.
Now the book came out in February. Is that right?
Yes. Of this year. Yes.
February of this year. So this is June. So March, April, May. So about 4 months ago or so. Has anything surprised you about the reception of the book or having a book out there? Or I mean, people buy them and throw them at you, or you know, what's your experience with having the book out there?
No one has bought them and thrown them at me, thank goodness.
Okay.
But I think there are certain things when you're a self-published author that happen that you just don't know. There's a lot that you don't know. I mean, there's so much that I learned about formatting. I actually hired someone to do the internal formatting because I wanted it to look very professional.
Right.
I hired someone to design the cover. But things that I've learned, I think I expected. Well, I think, you know, you're like dueling personalities. Like you half expect no one to read it and you half expect it to be on the New York Times bestseller list at the same time.
I know. My hopes have been dashed, but it's good.
Yeah.
It's good to see, you know, someone coming in still with the spunk and the, you know, the shine there. So that's good. Yeah. Oh, I hope it makes it, you know.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Who knows?
Yeah.
But also, I feel like it's been really well received in definitely in like the mental health communities and the psychological, you know, self-growth kind of community. So for that, I'm very grateful. I've had some real positive reviews. The other interesting thing as an author is, you know, you're told to ask people to read it ahead of time, like before you publish, so that you can include those reviews either on the back cover or, you know, on the Amazon site or whatever, right? On your Goodreads page. And, you know, you ask people and they say yes, and then they don't read it. And you're like, I don't know what to do because I certainly didn't pay them. I just asked people, right? And so I have quite a few like copies out there of people that never responded. So that's a little disappointing, but again, you just got to move on.
I think that's hugely interesting though, because you're right. You know, if you ask a couple of people to read it, how long do you wait? Right. Because you've got, I mean, at some point the book, I mean, you know, it needs to be released on your schedule based on what's going on. So yeah, that's fascinating. I hadn't, no, I asked people to read them and they say no. So, you know, I have a different problem than you have, but
maybe that would have been better because I would have no expectations then, you know?
That's right. Well, I think I looked at the reviews and stuff. I mean, it's doing really well and it is very well received. And I think the idea that it has the case study and the multiple personal experiences, I think that really makes it interesting and worthwhile, you know, because we can all write a book up from our perspective and that's interesting, but it's just the one voice. So you know, you only have it only brings in a certain viewpoint. So, so let's say there's another person out there who, you know, has a book in their head. I know you've given a little bit of advice, but what advice would you give, you know, for organizing? Like, you know, you said you have to journal and you had been writing for 11 years. So you had a lot to draw from. Not everyone's going to have done that. So what advice would you have for someone who does have, you know, a legitimate personal experience that should be in a book and it should be out there so other people can share it? What would you tell them?
I would tell them, write it.
Yeah.
Write it, because too many people say, oh, I think I'm going to write a book and then don't. I think you should absolutely write it. I think that in today's world, there are so many things that have been made easy for self-published authors. 20 years ago, we could have never done this.
Yeah.
And you can literally build your own following and your own brand online if you talk about something that's fascinating. If you want to write fiction, I think you should write it. I think that a lot of people have stories inside and they just need to get it out. And whether that's just freeform typing and hiring somebody to edit, or, there's so many resources online. I mean, you can literally write your entire book and never leave your house. I mean, I'm not advising you to do that, but you could conceivably.
Sure. I think that's right. And I would add to that, and don't be afraid of someone being critical of the work, because they're not being critical of you, even if it's your story. They're not being critical of you. And criticism, even the awful criticism we can get today, there's probably something in there that can help you move forward. For me, it'd be finding some of the people that wrote the reviews, but that would help. That's different. But I think don't be afraid to do it. Right? If you got the idea, write it, do it, and don't be afraid of it. So,
yes.
All right. Well, Lynn, look, it's been great talking to you. I wish you nothing but success with this book, and I'm glad that you're on this side of it too, by the way, because that was a heck of a journey that took you to producing, as part of it, a pretty good book with a pretty good opening, if I do say so myself.
Thank you very much.
All right, Lynn. Thank you. I'll talk to you. Bye.
Thank you for watching. Please consider hitting the subscribe button.